The following interview is being conducted as part of the Price of Freedom Oral History Series, sponsored by the Madison County Military Heritage Commission. Our goal is to inform the public of the sacrifices made by veterans in our community on battlefields around the world. Each veteran interviewed received a Valor Award for heroism during combat. I want to thank the Huntsville School System and the ETV Broadcast Center for their help in presenting this military heritage program. Hello, I'm Tom Kennemer. Welcome to our program. Today we'll be talking with retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Grayson Story. Colonel Story served 22 years in the Marine Corps. He is the recipient of the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Valor and the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Valor for his heroic actions during Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003 and 2004, respectively. He was inducted into the Madison County Military Heritage Hall of Heroes in 2024. Grayson, it's a pleasure to have you with us, sir. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Tell us a little about yourself. I understand you're a Michigan native, is that right?
I am. I was born and raised in southeast Michigan, just west of Detroit. If you were to split Detroit and Ann Arbor, right smack dab in the middle is where I grew up. Yeah. But lifelong University of Michigan football fan, and actually was considering University of Michigan as my second choice to the Naval Academy, where I actually attended.
Oh, I see. Did you have relatives in the military?
I did. Yeah. I did. So I guess the biggest influence that I had growing up was my father, who was a U.S. Navy veteran. He was a cryptographic yeoman, served on AD-18 USS Sierra at the Destroyer and Submarine Piers out of Norfolk Naval Station before transferring with my mom down to the old Naval Air Station, Albany, Georgia, where he served with RVH-3, Reconnaissance Fixed Wing Attack Heavy, Squadron 3.
Yeah. So you started young, maybe thinking about a career in the military yourself, right?
Certainly.
Yeah.
I guess I really caught on probably about 10 years old or so, watching World War II and Korean War era movies on Sunday afternoons after church or Sunday evenings with Dad. And then there was also an influence. My father's uncle was in one of the initial waves at Utah Beach on Normandy. And his name was Buster Eggers. He was a North Carolina farmer, but had a huge influence on my dad, and my dad had an influence on me. So, and when we visit Uncle Buster down in North Carolina, where my family heritage is actually from, we would routinely go and by and see Uncle Buster.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure he had a lot of war stories to tell.
He had some. So he was hit. He was hit in the hand pretty severely about 2 weeks in after Normandy in St. Lo. He was hit by a detonating round and lost a good portion of his hand, and that wound sent him home. But a Purple Heart recipient with a who landed on D-Day at Utah Beach, just in the thick of the fight with the 29th Infantry Division. Just a fantastic story of resilience and courage on his behalf, but it had a massive influence on our family.
Military certainly runs in your family. Now, you're a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. Tell us a little about the appointment process and why you chose the Marine Corps.
Sure. Well, at about the age of 14, we went on a historical type vacation as a family, and we ended up going effectively from the Florida up the East Coast, stopped off in the Carolinas, of course, to visit family. And then we went up and headed toward the Mid-Atlantic states and ended up in Annapolis, Maryland, in the D.C. area. And as we drove through the Naval Academy, my dad, kind of looked at me and says, "This is where officers are made, trained, and not to include other ROTC programs and whatnot." And I started asking some questions about the age of 13, 14 years old about the differences between enlisting like my father had and commissioning. And so my dad explained to me, what the kind of the commissioning process was. And by about the age of 14 or 15, I had committed to applying to one or more of the service academies. So during high school, my dad was pretty adamant. He says, "You aren't going to be able to make B's and make it here."
Yeah.
So if you want to apply to a service academy, straight A's is pretty much the standard.
Yeah.
Good standardized test scores, active in the community, active in your church, active in civic organizations, and obviously physically fit, which leads you to believe that you should probably be involved in sports or some kind of extracurricular activity.
Yeah.
So throughout high school, I really started looking at the service academies. By my junior year of high school, I committed to applying to both West Point and Annapolis. I had honestly discarded the Air Force Academy because I've got astigmatism in one eye pretty severely that would prevent me from being a pilot. And if I could not fly, I didn't want to go to the Air Force Academy. So I applied to both Annapolis and West Point. Applied to one Ivy League school, applied to the University of Michigan, and received, ROTC scholarships, received an appointment to West Point, and then waited until April of my senior year for the appointment to Annapolis to come through. The appointments for service academies are basically threefold. One, you have to be medically qualified physically as a result of the Department of Defense Medical Examination Review Board process, as you would for any enlistment or commissioning process. But you don't normally do that at the receiving station down at MAPS, Military Entrance Processing Station, as you would a normal enlistment.
Right.
You are assigned to go to a physician, an ophthalmologist, a general practitioner, and they take a look at you internally and mentally and make sure that you're fit for service, if you will. That's part of it. The other part is academic type acceptance rail, if you will. So one of the things that they look at you once you put in your application to Annapolis or to any service academy, they will declare whether or not you are a candidate based on just what they see generally, and also subject to your medical qualifications. So one of the things they'll look at is obviously they'll look at standardized test scores. They'll look at grade point average, standing in a class, how large a class is, what kind of classes that you've been taking. In there, almost all the service academies are geared towards engineering, mathematics, sciences. So with that, your mathematics and science scores are very important to all the service academies. And then lastly is really a political process. So if you have a relative who is a Medal of Honor recipient, if you have a relative who is a retired military officer or retired military enlisted, then there is a special process for those particular applicants, vice presidential type appointments, just as long as the individual meets the other
requirements,
meets the other physical and the medical requirements. The third part of it, though, for me, since my father was not retired military, he was just former military in the Navy, was that I had to apply to my congressman and my two state senators, U.S. senators, for a nomination. Right. So there is a whole process, and each congressional office and senatorial office, in my experience, has been different in the process. But generally, you would request of that particular elected official a nomination to a service academy, one or more or all of them. The Coast Guard Academy, I don't believe, requires anymore a nomination. They pretty much are able to choose their own because they don't fall really under Title 10 U.S. Code for the Department of Defense. So with that, in the process of applying, I applied to both my state senators, which was Senator Regal and Senator Levin, the former chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, as well as my U.S. House of Representatives congressman, which was Bill Ford at the time, who's now passed. And I just requested them that a nomination to Annapolis as my first choice and West Point as my second choice. And that nomination process really set into motion a series of interviews. It was done in a sequential type interview process, and where we would, the senator or the elected official would bring in a group or a panel of individuals and would interview each candidate, mostly from high school students, and would look at their scholastic record, would look at their credentials, would look at what the academies are saying about them, and would communicate internally from their office to the service academies to which the prospective candidate is applying. Right. My Congressman Bill Ford was actually my nomination to the Naval Academy, and but the process was rigorous. It was
it's a tough evaluation, isn't it?
It was a tough evaluation. It took about, from the time that I initially contacted the academy till the time that I received employment, was about an 18-month process.
And you chose, or they chose? You'd go in Annapolis as opposed to West Point.
I put in my sheaf of preferences. My number one was the U.S. Naval Academy. My second was U.S. Military Academy at West Point.
Now tell us about how did you become a Marine? How did you make that decision, or was that decision made for you?
Yeah. So at the Naval Academy, how the process normally goes is that during times of peace, 1/6 out of every class is allowed to go into the Marine Corps. It's capped because the Navy has a requirement for officers as well as the Marine Corps does. I initially went to Annapolis. I hate to admit this, but I went to Annapolis under the aspiration of becoming a nuclear submarine officer. My parents will tell you that probably as a child, I was more inclined to be a Marine than I was a submarine officer. But I did that probably same thing as the Top Gun effect had on naval aviators. Yeah. Probably the same effect of Hunt for Red October had on a couple of years after Top Gun, in that they kind of aggrandized being a nuclear-powered submarine officer. So when I went to Annapolis, I initially saw a difference in the different warfare specialties you could do in the Navy and the Marine Corps. So obviously there was, in the Navy, think about ship driving, surface warfare, subsurface warfare, submarine officers. You think about naval aviators, and then you think about Marine ground on that side, both the combat arms and the logistics side, as well as aviation. And then there are special operations, there are some intelligence type things, and there's a small percentage that go into like the medical corps, medical service corps. But at that time, it was assumed that you would have to be non-physically qualified to do the combat arms things in order to do the support aspects inside both the Navy and the Marine Corps. But there was one instance I can remember at Annapolis, and there was a Marine officer who stopped and was speaking with some midshipmen on some things, and I can't really remember what the nature of that conversation, but I walked away from that particular conversation with that Marine officer saying, I don't know what he is, but that's what I want to be. So that kind of solidified it. And then the process is, at the Naval Academy, is that they evaluate each midshipman, and each midshipman is brought before a board, another panel, for their primary warfare specialty that they want to pursue after graduation. This normally occurs in concert with your pre-commissioning physicals in your junior year or second class year as a midshipman at the Naval Academy. So what happened was we got the list of the things that we were physically qualified to commission into. I was qualified for everything but naval flight officer, for everything but naval aviator front seat driver for both the Navy and the Marine Corps.
Because you're
because of the astigmatism.
Right.
But I was qualified for Marine ground, naval flight officer backseat driver for aircraft, special operations, SEALs, surface warfare, submarines, everything else. And then they asked us, what would you like to do? And I put on top. I'd gone through some enough training to realize that my class standing probably wasn't as competitive as some of the other folks that wanted to go SEALs. and I just balanced and weighed the opportunities and decided on Marine Corps ground. So when I put in that particular application, I was brought before a panel that was chaired by a lieutenant colonel by the name of Leftwich. His father was Lieutenant Colonel Leftwich when he perished in Vietnam as a result of an extraction of Marines that were behind enemy lines that had gone bad. But his father is effectively the namesake for the Leftwich Armel Visitor Center at the Naval Academy, and his father is the quintessential infantry officer for Marines. So talking with Lieutenant Colonel Leftwich's son and having him ask me questions along with the other panel members, that was very daunting.
I'm sure he's very soft-spoken and polite. Right?
Oh, he's actually was a fantastic officer. Yeah. Can't say enough good things about the Leftwich family and what he did.
Grayson, tell us a little about the training now. I mean, the studies and all different types of training. You know, the athleticism, so forth. I mean, you had to do a lot of running, had to do a lot of studying. Tell us about some of that.
Well, the studying is only a lot if you do it. but if you don't do a lot of it, you probably won't pass.
Right, yeah.
There are some sayings at the Naval Academy. If you actually have above a 2.15 grade point average, and I think this still applies, you're considered satisfactory. So that kind of gives you an idea. The first C that I ever saw was my first semester at Annapolis, or should I say the first C I ever saw as a junior high or high school student or beyond there was at Annapolis. So the studies are pretty rigorous. It's an engineering-based type curriculum. Everyone, doesn't matter who you are, will take up to Calculus 3, post-Calculus 3 mathematics, physics, 2 semesters of physics, 2 semesters of chemistry, at least one semester of thermodynamics, 1 semester of naval architecture, maybe 2. And there is different tracks to the various education programs. You have Group 1 majors, who are your engineering majors, Group 2 majors, who are your general science majors, and Group 3 majors, which I ended up in more of your social sciences, political science, history, economics. The physical training never ceases. There's not, beyond plebe summer, which is effectively the initial training, there isn't a lot of organized physical training unless it's prioritized within the company. But sports, intramural sports are required if you are not a varsity athlete. I was a varsity athlete all 4 years. Played lightweight football, which is now called sprint football at Annapolis. And as a kind of a nod to the Marine Corps, my last time in uniform, in a football uniform, was November 10th on the Marine Corps' birthday, 1995, at West Point, playing against Army for what is really the national championship for the Eastern Lightweight Football League. We won, and it was a grand day to beat Army on that on their own turf.
Semper Fi, right? Well, tell us a little about the rivalry with West Point. Do you guys, do you even speak on that thing? I mean, tell us a little about that.
We do. So, now I'm an Army civilian, and so I've served in 3 of the services, 2 in uniform and 1 as a civilian now. But I'm surrounded every day by West Point graduates. It is funny. I have the things up in the office that go Navy, beat Army. But there is that one day out of the year where we are absolute rivals and can't stand each other. And it's that second Saturday in December now, what used to be the first Saturday in December. But the rivalry is real. And in this area where it's a Army heavy type environment, there's an installation, and my boss is a Army 3-star right now, and it's interesting to really go after that rivalry. And right across the street from where we live, here locally, we have a West Point graduate and her husband. And when I put up my my flag, the very first Sunday of Army Navy Week. It normally has an American flag, and right below it, it has the Naval Academy N Star and a Beat Army flag underneath it.
So take that, right? I mean, that's who you are, right?
That's who I am.
There are, of course, two great military academies, and we as a nation are extremely fortunate to have all of our military academies. Tell us about your first duty station once you graduated from the Naval Academy.
So the process is for all Marine lieutenants, once they are commissioned, they all go to the basic school in Quantico, Virginia. This is to make sure that in every aspect, to train every Marine lieutenant, no matter what their military occupational specialty is going to be, whether they're going to be a pilot, naval flight officer, logistician, combat arms officer, whatever it is, to be a provisional rifle platoon commander. Because what they really want to do is ensure that every Marine lieutenant, if called upon to be a small unit leader, knows how to employ a combat arms unit, knows how to organize, order, direct, and train, and then employ a unit against the enemy, no matter what their credentials, official credentials or technical credentials are. The interesting thing about that is that I find is that when you ask a Marine, what do you do? The normal response is, well, I'm a Marine,
right,
because they're a Marine first. And just like that, every Marine lieutenant effectively is where we say every Marine's a rifleman, every lieutenant is a Marine rifle platoon commander in that aspect of it, because they've gone through 6 months of training. After that, or during that process, towards the end of it, you are the staff at the basic school in Quantico basically does a poll and sees where the different MOSs, occupational specialties, where they are. They kind of parse out who the pilots and the naval flight officers that are under contract to do that particular job, where they are. They take them out of that polling process because they'll all end up matriculating to Pensacola, Florida for naval flight officer or naval aviator training. But then all of the ground Marine officers will then pool together, and that poll will determine where everyone is academically within the basic school class. And then there's a quality spread. The quality spread is first third, middle third, bottom third. And as long as they're physically qualified to do what they want to, the first person, first lieutenant in the first third gets his or her choice. The first person then in the second third gets his or her choice, and then the first person in the third gets his or her first choice.
Right down the line.
And then they go right down the line, and that ensures that no particular occupational specialty gets a better quality spread of individuals who have performed academic and physical achievements inside of their basic school class. And then after that, I selected infantry. That was my first choice. Ground intelligence was my second choice. I was selected to be an infantry officer, and then continued on there in Quantico after my 6-month basic officer course class to be an infantry officer course candidate, and went through infantry officer course, and then headed to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where for my first.
Know it well. Served there a little bit. Now, Grayson, you served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Was your mission basically the same in both those countries?
No. So by the time I was in Iraq, 2003, during the March Up, actually I had reported into my unit at 1st Marine Division within about 96 hours of graduating from Advanced Armor course at Fort Knox, Kentucky. That was given to me by the U.S. Army. We checked in to 1st Marine Division, 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion, which they're effectively the 8-wheeled light armored vehicles that are centered around the LAV-25, the Light Armored Vehicle 25. 25 stands for the 25 millimeter variant chain gun that is mounted on the turret. So 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion had not received and prepared to deploy. We knew that they were building up. for Iraq in 2000, probably for 2003 action or operation of some sort, and that was the unit that I chose to be a part of through the assignment process with Headquarters Marine Corps. Once I reported in December 2002, 1st Marine Division was in full mode of assault mobilization. No official order, no official prepare to deploy order, but then you could tell that there was certainly something was going to happen, and there was likely to be a if not a partial division deployment, a full division deployment.
On alert, yeah.
On alert.
Yeah.
So my job at that time was brought in as an incoming company commander, was check in with the battalion commander. He then placed me in the S3 or operations section, waiting for a company to come available. On or about the 3rd of January, we received a prepare to deploy order from 1st Marine Division Headquarters as part of 1st Marine Expeditionary Force at Camp Pendleton. By the 6th of January, I was supposed to have a change of command to take command of a company to go straight into a deployment. Battalion commander then brought me in and said, hate to tell you this, but we have a trained company that is already composited. They have their company commander. Well, I'm going to keep that company commander in place, and you'll remain in the operations section as a fire support coordinator and assistant operations officer. Fine, sir. You know, not my preference.
Right.
Would certainly rather be a commander. And then by the 17th of January, we deployed out of 32nd Street Naval Station in San Diego. 11 days after my prospective change of command, and only 14 days after the prepare to deploy order, we were actually on ship, embarked, and sailing to do a trans-Pacific, trans-Indian Ocean, and then a Persian Gulf deployment offload at Kuwaiti Naval Base. So during the 2003 deployment, the majority of it, I was a fire support coordinator for 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion, and then did some liaison work with infantry battalions to coordinate the maneuver between the two units to fill the seam, because most of the infantry units were not off-road units. They stayed on the road, whereas light armored reconnaissance would protect their flanks as a moving flank screen in a very complex maneuver crossing both the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers, and making sure that we were coordinating our fires because battlefield geometries are a real thing, and friendly fire can kill you as easily as enemy fire can. So we that was my job pretty much during the 2003 report.
Liaison officer, is that what you were?
I was a liaison officer for part of the time,
right.
For about a 1 week period, late March of 2003. And then I matriculated back to the battalion staff, continued to do fire support coordination on the battalion staff, and until we finally seized Tikrit and spent Easter Sunday in April 2003 up in Tikrit, having seized Saddam Hussein's hometown.
Yeah. Now, you received your first Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for Valor in that mission, right? Tell us a little about the actual mission for what you achieved in it.
Yeah. So the mission was actually relatively simple. It was my orders were to temporarily detach from 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion, maintain communication signals contact with my battalion, coordinate the form maneuver that we were doing, and to ensure that we were not interrupting the fires for 3rd Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment. 3rd Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment at the time was commanded by then Lieutenant Colonel, now retired Lieutenant General Carl Mundy. General Mundy, correction, not Carl Mundy. Carl Mundy was his father. Carl Mundy was the Commandant of the Marine Corps at one point, but his oldest son commanded 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. But I cross-attached, I reported into Colonel Mundy. He put me in his vehicle to make sure that our lead trace, our most forward element from 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion, did not go any farther than a certain point within his formation, because we were literally doing what the Marine Corps calls a movement to contact, where the locations of the enemy are sometimes in doubt, but you go in and you move forward. You have a aim point and an objective area, and you move towards that aim point, and you engage and encounter the enemy wherever you find him along that route or axis of advance, and lay into him whatever fires that you can, and then you move past through towards your objective aim point. During one of those engagements, there was a very close contact. We had that morning we had a platoon of tanks in front of us. Young second lieutenants, fresh out of armor school, was there talking with the battalion staff, and then I was a more experienced light armored officer, having gone through advanced armor course or armor captain's career course at Fort Knox, Kentucky, just months previous. And so myself and the lieutenant, the battalion commander, the operations officer, and the fire support coordinator all agreed to put the tanks, so the best form of maneuver was to put the tanks in a V formation. A V formation puts 2 tanks forward, creates target reference points as they were to move through, but they were going to be the lead because they are heavy armor. And then 2 tanks tucked in behind them, 1 tank for exploitation on either side of the flank, and then 1 tank as the platoon commander right dead center of the V formation to make sure that he could command and control the fires of that unit. So 4 tanks total, with the infantry battalion mechanized in assault amphibious vehicles, AAVs, all linked up, artillery supporting. We also had some Humvees that had some command and control assets, as well as some anti-armor units on there. They were bound pretty much to the road, or maybe within 100 meters off of either side of the road, as we were going through a town, or just shy of a town called Adiwania. Later on that morning, the enemy was in trench lines about 100 meters off the road, interlocking fields of fire, interlocking RPGs. And pretty soon we found that the tanks had, the enemy went to ground as the tanks bypassed. You can't hit what you can't see. They were well camouflaged in their trench lines in the desert. And we had really thought that based on intelligence, they had either surrendered previously, which we'd had a bunch of prisoners throughout that week of really heavy assault, or that they had abandoned their positions, donned civilian attire, and would either blend back into the civilian population, or they would surrender in uniform and be taken care of by U.S. forces. Mm-hmm. So the tanks bypassed, and the unit directly in front of the command element where I was located started to get engaged. Lighter skinned Humvees, there was, and then an infantry unit of mechanized infantry Marines were called up to then begin engaging in the trench lines. During that time, our flanks erupted. Our rocket propelled grenades started skipping along the road, started hitting the Humvees directly to our front. 2 Humvees in front of me, RPG hit the part of the Humvee, glanced up, and then unfortunately killed the gunner that was behind the turret. During that time, we realized very quickly that we were actually in a kill sack, or we were on what infantry guys call the X. Yeah. We had become the target. At that point in time, we dismounted, like every good Marine does, wants to get out of the vehicle, and we dismounted to include Lieutenant Colonel Mundy. We did a herringbone type formation, as is the battle drill, and immediate contact actions. We dismounted the vehicle, supported by our machine gunner who was on the turret, and we began fire maneuvering to our right flank, which was our northeast flank, into the trench line, and that's where the citation picks up and describes some actions there. But I have to tell you that was a completely team effort on that one. My part of that was extremely small. The lieutenant and the platoon directly in front of us, who took one of those casualties, also had a sergeant that was severely wounded, urgent surgical medevac. They not only stabilized that, but that particular platoon commander at that time, his name's Brian Shantosh, had some actions that day, along with some other folks in his platoon, some other Marines, that earned him the Navy Cross that day. And he was in a trench line at one point, just continuing to attack the enemy. So ours was more of a sport by fire platform, for which I was individually recognized, but I can safely say that the Marines that were in that command element and the combined anti-armor tank platoon that were directly to our front, they had much more of a hand in laying into the enemy and destroying the enemy positions that we engaged that day.
Grayson, briefly tell us about the second Valor Award you received, and that was in 2004. Now, you were in charge of this operation. Tell us a little briefly about that.
Sure. So the second deployment was much different. Towards the end of the first deployment, 2003, on May 1st exactly, the company commander for Company D, or Dagger Company, 1st Light Armor Reconnaissance Battalion, and I changed command. So I took command of a company in the middle of combat. We did a mission down on the Saudi border, came back, and then we were initially told that we needed to go back to Camp Pendleton to rearm and refit our vehicles for follow-on deployments. So we organized the battalion. We did a retrograde back to Kuwait, went firm with our equipment, and then we returned to Camp Pendleton. My particular company was actually slated to go on a Marine Expeditionary Unit deployment aboard ship with about 17 different LAV variants, light armor vehicle variants. And right after I had met with the Marine Expeditionary Unit, the MU commander, within about 2 weeks, my battalion commander, new battalion commander, brings me in and he says, "Hey, you're our only company commander now that has combat experience," and the battalion's been ordered back to Iraq. So in 2004, in February 2004, we deployed back to Iraq for stabilization and support operations. That really turned into a stabilization and support operations, and that led into a very hot summer between the first Battle of Fallujah in April of 2004, literally 21 years ago this week. We were in the middle of the first Battle of Fallujah, and that summer was a really long, hot summer. We went through the first Battle of Fallujah, 25 vehicles, 157 Marines, so the best Marines you'd ever want to meet, and sailors who are our corpsmen. And we actually were out in western Al-Anbar province along the Syrian border. We're called to marshal at Al Asad Air Base. We marshaled at Al Asad Air Base, which is in the kind of the far left of the Sunni Triangle. And then we began our movement towards the first Battle of Fallujah on the south side of the Euphrates River. There was already several engagements with 1st Marine Division units on the north side of the Euphrates River, but the south side was actually enemy territory, enemy occupied territory at that time, and we were dealing with insurgents, hardcore terrorists, Al Qaeda in Iraq, AQI at that point in time. So that Battle of Fallujah, that first battle, our job was to actually secure the bridgehead from where they hung the bodies from that triggered that first Battle of Fallujah. We secured that bridgehead, no casualties, no friendly casualties at least, fought our way up, secured the bridgehead, linked up with the Marines on the north side, and then closed the lines. Soon thereafter, within about a week, we were north of Fallujah on the north side of the Euphrates River in a town called Al Karma. We called it Bad Karma at the time. And then we went down and cleared Al Karma, where an infantry battalion had been repelled in the assault. We then returned to Camp Fallujah and then returned to Western Al-Anbar province. and this is where the award citation picks up for me. So during this particular engagement, we were mainly responsible for securing lines of communication between the Sunni Triangle and the Syrian and the Jordanian borders, where we had foreign terrorists coming across the border and then going into the Sunni Triangle. So our measure of success, if you will, was the reduced amount of terrorists that were coming into the Sunni Triangle to interdict terrorist transnational traffic on the border, to make sure that the lines of communication were secure, and to reduce IED activity, improvised explosive device activity along those main supply routes. So the part of the citation comes in where there were 2 surface laid, what ended up being 122 millimeter rocket rounds, surface laid. We had observed them, but we could not engage the enemy based on our trajectory of fire, because we had a friendly house that was actually in a depression between us and the enemy. And based on the types of rounds that we were firing, we have discarding sabot type rounds. Didn't want to hit friendlies with those rounds. So I made the decision to patrol down with my Marines to locate and mark the 222 millimeter rounds that were laid by what ended up being the IED team of 2 brothers that were assigned by a foreign terrorist organization inside of that particular village. As we patrolled down, I misidentified. I was on top of the turret with night vision devices, middle of the night, about a little bit past midnight. And I misidentified the rounds, where they were located. We thought that they were in some kind of sack, and there were several sacks, burlap sacks, rice sacks, all along this particular piece of highway. As we patrolled down, I misidentified, and then about that time, a street lamp actually, we believe, silhouetted our vehicle, and the enemy IED team initiated a device about 30 feet in front of the vehicle. My driver was actually physically closest to the blast, but I was the only one that was exposed to the blast directly, because I was on top of the vehicle with night vision devices. So my driver, Lance Corporal Vetterkin, and my gunner, Lance Corporal Hoyt, both barely 20 years old at the time. In fact, Kyle Vetterkin was 18 at the time, I believe. He might have been just turned 19. And then my crew, scouts in the back. I don't remember anything but the blast. I remember hitting the back of the turret, where the turret opens up, and then I remember kind of coming to, and my gunner is making the contact report for me. He had been used to being the company commander's gunner for a while.
He knew what to do.
He knew what to do.
Yeah.
Right. He was a well-trained Marine and knew exactly what to do. So he said, "Hey, contact. Dagger 6 had been hit. 6 is the call sign for the commander." So Kyle then reverses course on the vehicle, and my gunner then pulls me down into the turret. I'm stunned a little bit. I guess you would say, playing enough football in my life, I know what a good hit feels like. Yeah. So he pulls me down. We come to, and then orders are given to make sure that we slew the turret to the right, where we believe the enemy is. We we reversed course to the south, turned our vehicle to the east. We are looking for, no kidding, a Ford Bronco 2.
Really?
Right. We identified the type of vehicle, just couldn't engage it, but we were looking for Ford Bronco 2. So as I'm looking through the night devices, I then get back up behind the medium machine gun that is to my front, and you can't engage with the machine gun and have on your intercom at the same time. Yet it's a physical switch. It's not like automatic. It's not voice activated. And about the time I'm talking to to my gunner, he said vehicle, and I said fire. So Chris Hoyt put 3 rounds into the sensing burst, and then normally with the LAV-25, it's a 3-round sensing burst, then a 3-round burst on target. The sensing burst is just see where your rounds are landing, and the second one is to engage and destroy the target. Vehicle's going away from us at a high rate of speed, probably about a range of about 200 meters or so, where they would tucked in the vehicle into a hide site, and I said, fire. He, 3 rounds going down in rapid succession, then 3 rounds burst on target. Vehicle's in flames. As best I can recall, I said cease fire, and Chris said, "Roger, sir, continue fire." So some morbid humor.
Yeah.
But he put 6 more rounds into the vehicle. So destroyed the vehicle, destroyed the IED team, the 2 brothers, and then there was some intelligence that was going on in the area that they were going to try to get armored vehicles into an urban complex, because it was a village, to get them into an urban complex to create a larger fight, if you will. And that particular area was assigned to a different company. Made the determination at that point in time that we were going to go back to our observing position and continue to scan and report.
Yeah.
So that was the impetus for the second award, as far as I know.
Grayson, you had mentioned, and as you did a moment ago, how proud you were with the people that you served with. I want you to talk just a little bit about that, about how the teamwork during your deployments. Talk about that more.
So among Marines, small units have a culture of all their own. I mean, we're all Marines. It doesn't matter whether you're light green, dark green, medium green. You're all green. You're all Marines, and you centralize around the idea that your credential is your Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. You've earned the title Marine. It's one of the proudest titles that you'll ever claim in your lifetime, and it expires, beyond the grave. So the issue that I've always liked about the Marines is that we were always able to centralize around the fact that we have a mission, and we always say Marines first, or mission first, Marines always. And mission first, Marines always is a mantra that no matter where it is, no matter who we are, no matter what we do, the mission actually absolutely comes first. But in order to do that, a commander really has to take into account that the thing he loves the most about his Marines and sailors that are serving in his unit is that they're the ones that have to accomplish the mission, and so they're at risk. And part of the other thing that I love about Marines is that, particularly about the units and the small units, and the smaller the unit, the better the stories go. Is that the Marines don't mind the ridicule and the banner that goes back and forth, because at the end of the day, their embodiment, the purpose of their living is to make sure that their mission is accomplished and the unit is successful. And I can't say enough about how well my Marines gelled together. Didn't matter what their backgrounds were. We had kids who were from very wealthy families across the United States, all the way, some who had movie stars as relatives, and all the way to kids that come from towns in the backwoods that you've never heard of, and the middle class in between those two bipolar type cultural differences. And it was amazing to watch them come together and to watch them focus on the mission and really to take care of each other, because at the end of the day, you're going to fight and win as a unit. Yeah.
Do you stay in contact with any of the people that you served with?
I do. I stay in contact with most of the company grade officers that I served with, and some field grade officers who made it a career like I did. I do stay in contact with some of the junior enlisted. I served with both at Camp Lejeune and Camp Pendleton. when I was from the time I was a platoon commander in Rifle Company XO, executive officer, as well as when I was company commander. And those relationships are varied, but really rich relationships come out of there, and they can recall things that I can't any longer. But it is fun.
Grayson, there has to be a certain amount of stress when you serve in a war zone, and you've touched on this briefly, but I want you to talk a little more about when you serve in a war zone in combat, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So total of each of my 5 tours in combat were different, every one of them. 2003 was different than 2004. 2004 was more stabilization support operations, and then we had to revert to combat mainstream, what we call phase 3 combat operations, and then back to stabilization support operations. Afghanistan was really as a field grade officer. I didn't go back to the battlefield until I'd already promoted to major, and then my last deployment was as lieutenant colonel in a staff job and a deputy commander for special operations joint task force. But the issue that I came back is that each time I had to deal with different facets of relating back to either society or back to my job or the different people that I was interacting with as part of my profession, and I really found that in each of them there can be different problems that arise. My first 2 deployments, I was not married, no children. My last 3 deployments, I was married, and 2 of those deployments I had 2 children, with my wife, and the last one, all 3 of our sons have been born at that point in time. So relating to them and relating to family life is a lot of times difficult. Because one battalion commander put it like this: I don't make any large decisions in the first 6 months back home. The problem is what happens when you only have 6 months back home.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So you really do have to. It's an ebb and flow within a relationship, and I think each family has its own culture and how they deal with the transitioning service member, and then particularly after a career and retirement, how you deal in transition in retirement. Yeah. But it can be daunting at times, and a lot more scary than combat ever was.
How does it make you feel when people call you a hero when they read about or hear about what you did in combat? How does that make you feel?
Normally when people say something like "Thank you for your service," I try to respond something like, "Thank you for being, an American,
Right.
Type of American worth fighting for." But then again, I realize that every American is worth fighting for. But I also usually say something like "Best job I ever had." So there's lots of people that spend a career in really don't like the term job. They don't like the term, well, it's my business or whatever. It really was and still is to a degree my profession. That's it. I'm in the profession of arms. That's what I do. And looking at it from a military point of view, I think I come at it from a different thing. I don't think of anyone who went to combat and did what they saw was their duty, as they had the wisdom to see what their duty was. I don't see that as heroism. I didn't do anything else than any other Marine.
Now, we've talked about your tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Talk about some of the other places you were stationed during your 22-year career. I think you mentioned that you were Joint Command out of Tampa, right?
I did. So I started out at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, as a rifle platoon commander. Went from there, did a career broadening tour as an intelligence officer. Came back to the infantry. Went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, for school.
You guarded the money.
I guess in a way we did.
Yeah.
The gold depository is right there on the installation. So yeah, it's an interesting place. But then went there and route to Camp Pendleton. After Camp Pendleton, I went to Naval Postgraduate School, Monterey, California. Went from there to the Pentagon, did a tour there, and then went from there. Actually left the Pentagon to do a tour with the Army in East Afghanistan. That was my first tour. and then went from there to back down to Camp Lejeune, back home, and spent the next 6 years there between 2nd Marine Division and the Marine Special Operations Command. At the end of that last tour, we were either going to go to Maryland for joint duty assignment orders or down to Tampa, Florida. Tampa, Florida was the choice made for us by the Marine Corps. They don't call them suggestions. They don't call them suggestions. They call them orders for a reason. And we were ordered to headquarters U.S. Special Operations Command in Tampa. And then during that time, my wife and I jointly decided that it was time to retire. It was the right time for our family. It was the right time for us. But enjoyed every minute. And a lot of people say in the Marine Corps you can either choose to do the typical rung on the ladder, by the book type career assignments, or you can choose to have fun. I had a lot of fun.
Talk about the adjustment, Grayson, from military life to civilian life.
So when I retired officially on the 1st of September of 2018, technically I think it's 31 August 2018, last day of the month. And then quickly, we were already in the local area here in Huntsville, Alabama area. We actually came to this area via a hurricane that hit the Tampa area, and we ended up on hurricane evacuation for about 5 days here in a local motel on Wildchina Boulevard with our boys and dogs. But what I enjoyed about the transition was figuring out what comes next. I've always had a little sense of adventure. Always enjoyed not having everything figured out, and the Marine Corps gave me the tools, and I think a little bit of wisdom to know what was best for my number one team, which is my family. My responsibility as a husband and father to figure out what we can do to help raise our kids the best possible way that we know how, and so we were blessed to on that last day of evac, my wife looked at me and she says, "This is home." And this was September of 2017. We knew that retirement was somewhere in about 6 or 7 months away as far as the ceremony goes, and then the move would be the summer of 2018. And I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" She goes, "No."
It was like it was meant to be. I want to thank you for participating in our oral history interview series and allowing us to preserve your military experience. And thank you, sir, for your service to our country.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that very much. Now, if you'd like more information regarding this interview or any interview in our series, please visit the Madison County Military Heritage Commission website at mcmhc.us. I'm Tom Kennemer. Thank you very much for being with us.